All right, this will be the last video in this portfolio layout demo. We've got all our content added, we've got the infrastructure, so we've set up all our paragraph styles and our running footers and page numbers and our parent pages and all that good stuff. The last thing we're going to do is just add a table of contents, and because we have used paragraph styles, and specifically because we've used a particular paragraph style, which is this one called title, and we've applied it to all of our project names, right? And that's the only thing that we've applied it to, right? Is just on these section dividers, we've applied it to the name of the project. We can use that to our advantage. So we can create a table of contents that InDesign generates automatically that just scans through our document, searches for that paragraph style, and then references the page number that it found it on. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to set up. So First, I'm going to create the paragraph style that's going to style the table of contents. And so we can look at our reference document here, our type hierarchy. So this is the one that we need to make, table of contents. And we didn't make it earlier, so we need to make it now. And we can see it's based on title, which is helpful. So we've got title already selected. So if I click New and then double click to edit that style, I'll call it Table of Contents, TOC for short. It's going to be based on title, which is what we want. The basic character formats, I know we're going to go down to 24 point. So we're cutting that size in half. I think that's the only change in this menu. We want to change the color to paper. So instead of black, we're going to have white text. We need the figure style to be tabular old style because we want those kind of fancy wide-based numbers. So let's see, open type, figure style, tabular old style. Just want to make sure I don't miss anything, so I'm going through this carefully. The alignment needs to be left, so we want to go up to our indents and spacing and make sure our alignment is left instead of right aligned. I'm going to do the tab last, so the only other thing we need is a space after of 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to take space after, key it up to 3/16. That's just going to give us a little bit more space between each table of contents entry. And then last but not least, we want to make a tab. A tab is basically when I hit my tab key, everything that I have to the right of the cursor is going to jump over to wherever I set that tab position. So I'm sort of kind of creating like an indentation within the text box. So I'm going to just click anywhere above the ruler here, and I'm going to get a tab. And I can just specify the distance that tab is set to at 4, because 4 inches, if we go back to our type hierarchy, it says we want one tab at the position of 4 inches. I'm going to come back to the leader part and explain what that means once we've got the table of contents set up. But we want to make sure the tab is aligned to the right. So we want a right aligned tab instead of a left aligned tab, or a right justified tab. Basically, we want everything to be aligned flush along a right edge rather than flush on a left edge. And that's going to be our paragraph style, so I will hit OK. And then we can generate our table of contents. Actually, one more thing I might do is change the landing page here to our blank parent page. So we just get rid of all that extraneous stuff that we don't need. And I'm just going to make a box, like a text box, to kind of pre-load our table of contents once we get it generated. So I'm going to create a text box that takes up the entire page all the way to the bleed margins, to the inside, to the outside bleed. I'm going to fill it with gray background. So we want to make sure the fill is selected, not the stroke and not the text. We just want the fill. Select black, and then we'll change the tint to 25%. So basically, we're kind of creating a 25% saturation of that black swatch. And that's what we want. So I'm going to click away. Now we've given our table of contents a place to land once we create it. Then I'm going to go to Layout, Table of Contents, and this is our dialog box that we use to set up our table of contents. So by default, it might look smaller. It might look like this. And if it does, you just want to hit more options because we want to use some of this stuff. And it seems complicated, but it's not. And we'll walk through it from top to bottom. So the title, I'm just going to actually leave that alone for now so we can see what happens. and the style is the paragraph style that would be applied to the title. This is the important part. So the styles in table of contents, this is the part where InDesign is kind of doing some legwork for us. Basically, this is all of our paragraph styles that we've created, and we can select the ones that we want. In this case, we just want the title, right? Because that's our project names. And if I use this arrow key to add, basically now I've said InDesign, go look through this entire document, and anywhere you find this paragraph style applied, that's what we're going to include in our table of contents. So this is kind of the automated step. And you could have a multi-tiered table of contents, or you could have it search for multiple types of paragraph styles, right? Maybe you've got a more complicated table of contents you want to design. This can be tiered, it can be multi-layered, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, but we're going to keep it very simple. So I only want InDesign to include the paragraph style that is title, where it finds it. Okay. And this is where we actually style things. So in the entry style, the entry is the project name, right? So it's going to find that text where the style is applied. So we want to make sure that we apply our table of contents paragraph style that we just created. And that's what's going to format the entry. We want the page number that entry is found on to show up after the entry. So we'll leave after entry selected. And then between the entry and the number, so right between this and this, we want a tab, and that's what's selected by default. That's what this little up caret T stands for, is tab. And that's why we included a tab in the paragraph style that we made just a minute ago. That's all I'm going to do for now, just to see what happens. So I'm going to hit OK, and you can see that it loads my cursor with the table of contents. And then I'm just going to click in this box that we already made, this gray background, and it's going to load it. And there's a few things going on. So first of all, let's do a little bit of cleanup formatting. So I'm going to select the text box. I'm going to use our text frame options to first vertically center the table of contents. And then I'm going to use some left inset spacing set at 2 1/4 inch, so 2.25, just to bump things in there. So right now this is kind of getting us to where we want. So I'm going to hit OK. Now there's a few things that are different, obviously. We've got this weird, dumb contents text that we don't want. And if we look at our reference document, here we've got some nice orange numbers with a leader line, and here we don't have that yet. So there's a couple things that we need to fix. The first is we kind of want to get rid of this contents text. And so we'll go back to our layout and table of contents. And this is what title means. I think it's just easier to have a reference. It's basically just saying, do you want to give your table of contents a name? And it named it contents by default. We don't want a name because we just want the projects and their numbers. I think that's self-explanatory. I don't know that we need to title it something. So we'll get rid of that and hit OK, and that fixes that problem for us, which is nice. So now we've got one thing fixed up. But now we need to make sure that these are orange, and we want to create that connecting line. So what I'm going to do is go back into my table of contents options. And here, where it says style, I'm going to say for the page number, we want to apply a character style. And we don't have one that would create an orange color, so we need to create one. So I'm going to say new character style. I'll call it TOC, table of contents, numeral. Basically what we need to do is change it to the light weight of that font. I'm not going to change the font family. I don't need to specify it. I'm just going to say the style. And then we need to change the character color to primary, which is that orange swatch that we made a long time ago. And I'll hit OK. And now that character style is going to be applied to the page number. So if I hit OK, I get those orange numbers. Now, the last thing we need to do is create that leader line, and that's what I skipped earlier when I made the paragraph style. So I'll go back to our table of contents, paragraph style, double click to edit it, and now we can actually see kind of what we're doing. I'll go to that tabs section, make sure the tab is selected that we created earlier, the right align tab at 4 inches. And here where it says leader, if I use a period, and then I'm going to just click away so that it activates, you see we get this dotted line that connects basically between the tabs. So it's saying from wherever the tab was made to wherever the tab ends up, right, between those two, text areas, fill it in with this character just repeatedly until you get to the end. We can change this to be anything we want. We can make it a question mark. You could make it a series of different random characters, right? You can do anything you want. We're just going to use a period, but we're also going to add a space to give us a little bit more of a gap between those dotted lines. And that's what a leader is. It just creates a repeated character or character set in between a tab and the text that it's separated from. So I'm going to hit OK. But the last thing we need to do is make that orange, right? Because it looks a little strange and heavy being that white bold type. So we're going to go back into table of contents. And we're going to apply that same orange character style to the between entry and number, right? So between this, the entry, and this, the page number, we're going to apply a style. And it's the same style that we applied to the page number. And then we'll hit OK. And that gives us our final formatted table of contents that looks just like the one in our reference document. The really cool thing is that now that I've got this thing generated the way that we want it, I can rearrange stuff, right? So let's say I want to take this Velox project that we only have 3 spreads for at the end, and I want to make that the opening project in my portfolio. So I can drag that selection. It's not letting me get quite to the top here. There we go. I could drag that to be before this very first project that we have right now, which is the coffee dripper. And now those pages kind of come up and take the place. And the table of contents doesn't update just automatically in real time the same way that our page numbers do, right? So now even though we've moved things around, we still have the correct project here. We still have the correct page number. But what we can do is just select the table of contents, go back to that layout menu and click update, and it'll just switch things around, right? And so now it's reflecting the correct pages that all these projects are found on. So it's just a big time saver, right? And if you want some type of feature like this in your portfolio or in any printed document or even in a presentation or something, like a long thesis presentation, the nice thing is instead of just creating this thing manually and then having to go find like what page is this on and what page is that on and then type these things in by yourself, you can just have InDesign keep track of it for you. The only caveat is that you need to use paragraph styles and apply them intelligently in order for InDesign to be able to search for the information that you want it to search for. So that is how you set up a table of contents. And that's pretty much the end of the demo, right? The last thing we could do, some finishing touches, we could apply the blank parent page to this final page in our portfolio. And the only other thing, if we were ready to print, we wanted to have Blurb, create our final document for us. First, we'd want to save. And then all we'd need to do is go back to File and Blurb Book Creator and make sure that we have this document selected. This is the one that I just made. And now that I have a final page count, right, I've got 24 pages, I can update this to reflect that. And once I've got that updated, I can create my cover template. And if I click that, it's going to say, make sure you're finished, right? So that the file that it creates is the correct size for the number of pages you have in your document, but I'm done. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to ask me where I want to save that cover document. So I'll hit save. And then it generates this template for me. And this is the outside and the inside cover. And it's explained by this information, which again, if you go to your layers, you can hide the instructions. But it's created a page basically that includes a spine that is the correct spacing for how many pages are in your document. So if I had a 50-page portfolio that I wanted to print this way, this spine would be about twice as large. And if I had a 200-page document, the spine would be much larger to be able to wrap around and accommodate all those pages and content. But basically all you need to do is hide the instructions, and then the same way that we laid out and set up the pages, you would design your cover however you'd like to design your cover. And just know that this is going to be the front of it, this is going to be the back, right? Because this page is actually wrapping around the document. And then once you've got this thing designed, you would basically go back to the Blurb Book Creator And once you've got these two documents linked, right, it knows where my pages are, it knows where my cover is. I can just click upload book, and it's going to say it wants to save, but it's going to go through all this pre-flight stuff. It's going to check everything to make sure that I don't have weird errors in my document. And I don't know how long it's going to sit and think here, but yay, we passed. So it's now going to open the PDF for me to review it. So it's actually generated its own PDF. I didn't have to export it myself. So I'll say, okay, sure. And it's going to show me the cover, which is just 2 blank pages because I didn't edit or format anything. But these are the pages of my document. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, et cetera, et cetera. So you would go through and kind of proofread this stuff, make sure everything looked the way that you wanted it to look. And then once you're finished making sure everything looks good, you could say upload book. I'm not going to upload it because I don't want it to upload this, but once you click upload, it will say, okay, we're going to upload this to the Blurb website, and then through that website, you could order copies of it, which is a pretty self-explanatory process. So that's the extent of the demo. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. There's a lot of complex stuff in here. I don't think this is stuff that, in the past we've really been able to teach as far as using specific programs like InDesign. But I do think, just as a final word, that regardless of whether you'd like your portfolio to be a printed document or a digital document or some hybrid combination of the two, InDesign is a very useful application. And if you choose the correct format and you design things appropriately, you could end up with a pretty flexible document that you could export and have printed in various ways or upload to a website without having to kind of update and manage portfolios in multiple states and multiple places. So hopefully going through and actually structuring this thing and creating this document helps to learn some of those basic tools like paragraph styles and even some of the more complicated things like text variables and tables of contents and running footers and things like that. So hopefully going through this process will save a lot of time and allow you to create more complicated documents more earlier in your academic career. So that's it.